Hi, I'm Angus Taylor and welcome to a Tech Talk on digital identity. I'm here with Peter Alexander from the Digital Transformation Agency. Welcome, Pete.
Thanks for having me.
Tell me, what is digital identity? We're hearing a lot about it, but what actually is it?
So digital identity is the same as physical identity that you would do to prove who you are, to get particular services, whether it's from government or banking. This is who I am, so you get the services that are appropriate to you and that should be delivered to you, and you're saying who you are in a digital world.
So it's kind of like introducing yourself in the digital world.
That's absolutely what it is, and saying, this is who I am, and then allowing you to establish something that you can reuse to make your life easier next time you do it.
So do we already have digital identities?
So we already have digital identities, absolutely. So when you do online banking and do banking through applications, you've established an identity with the bank. It's created a digital identity for you, but you've done a physical process to get that. You've gone into a bank and done 100 points of identity checking. That's then converted into a digital identity and you use that. Our ambition is to take that first step of doing the physical process where you go into a shop front or you go into a bank and making that digital, which we can absolutely do.
Right, so I already use the ATO websites. Yes. And I use MyGov.
Yes.
Don't I already have digital identities?
So you have a digital identity. The thing we're looking to, I guess, expand from your current digital identity is choice and give you this opportunity to say, rather than government telling you for tax, use a tax identity, or for MyGov, use a MyGov identity that gets you a bunch of other government services, to say, well, what about the fact you're a person and you not only deal with the federal government, but you deal with a state government and a local government and a bank and a utility and other commercial providers? What if we could go to a framework that said you can use an identity that you've established somewhere else to deal with government?
So does that mean I can actually streamline down to one or a few of these things if I want to?
Absolutely. That's the ambition, to say, how can we make your life better as a user of services that government provide and others to make your life better? And there's a couple of really nice attractions to that. One is we make you more productive. Mm-hmm. You have to have less worry about remembering passwords and going through processes of proving your identity. You can use things you've already got. So we make you more productive, but we also make your life simpler. You'll be more satisfied by having to deal with that. And I guess the interesting kind of third part to that is we build this really interesting competition into the system, because if we've got a bunch of identity providers and service providers, they're going to want to get better and better. If I'm provider A, I'm going to want to prove to be part of this identity network, I'm going to be the best I can be. And so we build this really nice innovation and competition into this space that says...
So the point is I get to choose.
You get to choose.
You're setting up a system where I can choose how I want to introduce myself as Angus Taylor or Peter Alexander. Yes. And I can streamline that down to one way of introducing myself.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's a really nice way of putting it.
So having established who I am in the way you described, and we've all done those 100-point checks for banks and utilities and others when we go into a phone plan. Having done it once, does this mean I'll be able to, in the future, just keep using that identity and say, hey, I'm Angus Taylor, it's clear, I've already established who I am, and people can trust that?
Yes. So you would have an identity provider in this model, and we'll use an example of, say, Australia Post. So you prove your identity at Australia Post. Australia Post then can effectively vouch for you and say, yes, this is Angus Taylor when you go to do your next transactions.
They introduce you in a sense.
Yeah, that's right. They're like your friend who says, this person who's saying who they say they are, we're saying that's who they are. They've proven themselves to us. The only time you would need to do anything additional is if you go for a higher security transaction. And so an example would be, in time, it would be your passport.
Right.
So if you had a transaction like getting a tax file number, or like paying your tax, or getting welfare payments, or reporting income, you would go to a higher level for your passport. And so you might have to do some additional steps then, but that would be the only time.
The big concern here that you've already mentioned from some is privacy.
Yes.
Can you talk about what you're doing to make sure that people's privacy is protected?
So to protect privacy, I mean, there's the kind of lead-up work where we've engaged privacy advocates. We've had several meetings with them. We've done privacy impact assessments. We've done one major one. We're doing a second one now. There is some possibility now in the current world. You can have a fake driver's license and go into that process. Where we're stepping it up is we will use biometrics from your driver's license that you submit as part of your digital process.
So
biometrics is your photo. So you would in our process, you would say, I'm Angus Taylor. You would submit a photo of yourself, a liveness tested photo, and liveness testing is just to say it's not a picture of you. So that photo goes in, and it's actually compared to the driver's licence that's held by the say, New South Wales, in your case, road service, and it would say, yep, that's the right one. That's a lot harder to defraud, and it protects your privacy.
So you're saying actually this is more secure than the traditional way of doing it?
Absolutely. That's our view, and the privacy people are supportive of that.
Yeah. So tell me, how broad will this be? What government services do you think can be involved in this?
Our ambition is it would be all government services, and you know, there are absolutely physical government services that we provide, but you can initiate them through a digital transaction and digital process. We have, as part of our policy work, how do you get a digital identity if you can't prove yourself digitally? What's the processes? So we are going to build in ways for people to be vouched for by supporting parties and others who would deal with them. But noting there are a number of Australians and non-Australians who would get government services who will always struggle to kind of have a digital presence.
They will continue to use offices.
They will continue. You know, one of the really nice things about kind of this digital world is if we can get more and more people into digital, it gives us more capacity to put extra resources into serving those people who need it at the other end.
So not only are we giving people choice about how they introduce themselves, we're also giving them choice about how they actually identify who they are.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. In terms of benefits for the public, I mean, we have talked about just reducing the time it takes to do things and making it easier and increasing security, not reducing it, and privacy, of course.
Yes.
What is your early testing, though, showing about the benefits that you think might flow?
There's the public, there's individuals who deal with government, and then there's business who deal with government. This kind of identity work covers both. And so for individuals, the benefit and the productivity improvement is really around time. And then we're giving them back time and we're making their life simpler.
Frustration?
Frustration. And so, you know, it is that we are saying every time you do a service, you don't have to prove who you are. You know, every new agency that you want to interact with, every time you lose something, you don't need to go through this rigorous process again of standing in a shop front and waiting. And so we give people time, reduce frustration, and we give them opportunity to do more.
Does this ultimately mean, by the way, that things like telling the government that I've changed my address, I've moved, they can actually tell every government department? I don't have to keep putting in the new address everywhere I go?
Yes, and so the really nice thing with identity is that it's like the base layer foundation of then enabling a whole bunch of other services, like, so this tell us once, change of circumstances, I've changed address, you know, I've been married, I've done this, I've done that, whatever circumstance change, you can tell government once. But it also then enables some really nice services that we've tried in the past to kind of get to be really useful and usable services like notification consolidation. And that means
so this
all my
is
messages.
Telling me when I've got to pay my tax.
That's right. You know,
when I've got to update a government form.
Or your notice of tax assessment, or whatever it might be, you can get a notification that says, Angus Taylor, you know, remember to do this. Yeah. And so if you're a student, it might be a notification each week to remind you on a Centrelink support payment. It might be to remind you to update your income details. Yeah. So it is giving people a consistent, usable way, but we would build into that the way of delivering messages and services that meet whatever people want. We can deliver them to WhatsApp or to...
And all of this is possible because we've established a clear, simple, streamlined digital identity with the government.
Absolutely. Yes, absolutely.
So I'm often asked when we talk about this issue whether this means that we're going to replace a whole lot of people's jobs with computers, so to speak.
Yes.
Do you want to just talk a little bit about that?
So kind of this workforce of the future and what are jobs of the future in Australia going to look like, and what's the impact of things like digitisation and digital identity? I mean, I think it is that there will be a shift in kind of what we do and how we do it, but I think the great opportunity for Australia is in leading this work, we build opportunity for Australians to participate in it and be players in the digital economy, which is not just a national economy, it's global. And if we compete, we generate great economic opportunity for Australia to do well. And I think that's an awesome thing.
Are we leading the world in what we're doing here?
So we are. And I think lots of jurisdictions around the world, lots of countries have done work on digital identity. But what we've seen to date is no one has done it and delivered something that is useful and usable and secure and reliable in a federated identity world. And so we are right at
federated identity where you've got choice essentially.
Yes, rather than having a national identifier that says you've got one number.
We're not going down the national identifier track.
No, and Australia has kind of never been attracted to that, and the federated identity has been a challenge. But we think we've cracked a model which will work, and our intent is to roll it out service by service over time, with a transition that makes people's lives as comfortable and easy as we can, to kind of not say, you've proven yourself to Centrelink in the past, we're now going to make you do it again. And there will be a reproofing at time, but we'll make that as usable and seamless as we can for people.
So that's fantastic. Where can we find out more?
There's lots of information about this at the DTA website, so dta.gov.au. So we've recently released a video about the proof of identity, and there'll be more and more of those examples of what it's going to look like and how it works over the next few months.
And in the not too distant future, we'll actually have real situations like the tax file number you talked about where people can actually use this.
Absolutely, and so the intent is for the tax file number to be ready to go out for people to use in the second half of next year.
Fantastic. Pete, thanks so much for your time.
Thank you.
And really looking forward to seeing the outcomes of your work.
Thank you so much.